One of the hottest years on record. It was among the hottest years recorded.
The hottest year on record.
Another hot year. Global warming. What will we do about that? Politicians from most every country promised to deal with it by signing something called the Paris Climate Agreement.
A historic climate agreement in Paris.
But when President Trump took office, he said,
"The United States will withdraw."
What? We will withdraw? We alone?
President Trump isolated the United States with his reckless and indefensible decision.
My neighbors in New York agree with that. And so do most of the media.
A lot at stake, potentially, for the planet.
Really? I bet they don't even know what was in the agreement. I didn't.
Paris Accord was somewhere between a farce and a fraud.
Manhattan Institute senior fellow Oren is one of the few people who've actually read the Paris Agreement and also the commitment set in by every country.
You don't even have to mention greenhouse gases in your commitment if you don't want to. You send in any piece of paper you want. We're going to staple them all together, and we're going to call that the Paris Accord. Everyone sent in a piece of paper, and they stapled it together and held it up and said, this is amazing.
China has made a major commitment.
So what's in the commitments that every country made?
India has ratified the Paris Climate Accord, committing the world's fastest growing economy to limit carbon dioxide emissions.
What you find is they either pledge to do exactly what they were already going to do anyway, or pledged even less than that. China, for instance, said, we pledge to reach peak emissions by about 2030. Well, the United States government had already done a study to guess when Chinese emissions would peak, and their guess was about 2030.
Peak doesn't mean stop. It just means stop increasing.
That's right. So, in fact, China promised they will continue increasing their emissions for some time to come.
And yet,
China was actually one of the better pledges. India made no pledge to limit their emissions at all. They pledged only to become more efficient, but they proposed to become efficient less quickly than they're already becoming more efficient. So their pledge was to slow down. You know, my favorite was Pakistan, whose pledge was to reach a peak at some point, after which to begin reducing emissions. And so you can staple those together and you can say we now have a global agreement, but what you have is an agreement to do nothing. And if anything, you've gone backwards, because whereas in the past you could have criticized countries and said, hey, why aren't you doing anything? Now we have an agreement that says, in fact, we will applaud you for doing nothing.
We came together around the strong agreement the world needed.
Obviously, President Obama got a lot of political mileage out of that, but the climate didn't get much at all. The one country that showed up in Paris with a very costly, ambitious target was the United States. So President Obama took all the zero commitments from everybody else, but threw in a really expensive one for us.
Super expensive. Obama pledged to reduce American emissions by 1/4. Of course, it's true that the United States produces twice as much greenhouse gas per person as China and India. So isn't it on us to do more?
Even if we zeroed out our emissions tomorrow, the future of climate change is still a question of what happens in China and India.
We're getting out.
When Trump said he was leaving the Paris Accord, he was trashed by politicians across the world.
I'm dismayed at the U.S. decision to pull out of the Paris Agreement.
President Obama said, this administration joins a handful of nations that reject the future.
If the future is worthless climate agreements that everyone goes to Paris to talk about, then first of all, that's a very sad future, and it's one that we should be proud to reject.
The Earth is warming. Man may well be increasing that. But the solution isn't to waste billions by forcing emissions cuts here while other countries do nothing, while pretending to make cuts. Trump was right to repudiate this phony treaty. Most of us didn't even know how phony it was. But now we do. Have you taken the red pill? That means not taking the blue pill and waking up to the fact that what you've been told is often wrong.
You take the blue pill.
The phrase comes from the movie The Matrix.
Believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
That moment in The Matrix, Morpheus is offering him simply the truth.
Candace Owens says she took the red pill, and now her YouTube channel offers red pills to millions of others.
People don't care to watch CNN anymore. People are paying attention to YouTubers. Okay, my second video went trending worldwide with 80 million views.
80 million?
80 million.
It's obviously the media's fault.
In that video, she mocked the media for finding racism everywhere.
The persistence of racism in America.
The surge of hate, the online racism.
CNN was trying to sell to me, as a black person, that the KKK was alive and well. That was ridiculous.
Oh my God, Charlottesville, white supremacy is alive and well.
So I made a video just essentially making fun of the narrative. How ridiculous that I should be scared to go outside because the KKK is alive and well.
Another police shooting of a black teen.
She also complains that the media imply the biggest threat to young blacks is the police.
Police officer charged with murder, caught on camera shooting an unarmed black man.
Fact number 1. Approximately 93% of black homicide victims are killed by other black people.
Police violence is a real threat.
No, it is not. And I will not allow you to say that either. It is not a real threat, okay?
Some innocent people have been tortured by police.
That's absolutely right. Some innocent people have also been struck by lightning. 16 unarmed black men were killed by police officers in 2016. If you were watching CNN, you would have thought it was happening every single day, okay? That's a problem. 16 represents 0.00004% of the black community, and yet there were riots and there were protests. And Black Lives Matter has actually resulted in more black deaths across the country because police officers don't want to answer the call.
It's not popular in the black community to say such things or to say that you are conservative. Owen's jokes in this video that it's easier to tell your parents you're gay.
Mom, Dad, I'm a lesbian. I like girls. Oh, sweetheart. We always knew. Oh, thank you guys. Oh, also, I think I might be a conservative. I don't understand. Guys, it's totally fine. It's okay. I just, think a little more conservatively. But sweetheart, you're black. Mom, I'm still black. I simply think that we should maybe put the economical future of this country ahead of the social issues. That is all. Sweetie, can you please just be gay? It's more difficult to say to someone, I'm a conservative.
Candace says the big issue facing blacks is not racism or police shootings. It's dependence on government that began 50 years ago with Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs.
They incentivized mothers, right, to not marry their fathers. That's why single motherhood is up. The government would give you more if you didn't marry him. We are fully reliant on the government. My entire family is on welfare, save a couple of people. And what it does is they essentially offer you some money, and then they say, wherever you work, okay, you don't make enough, so we're going to give you this much money on top of that. So they do what? They say, oh, I don't want to make more because the government is already giving me $500 that I don't want to lose.
And your entire family's on welfare?
Yeah, pretty much my entire family's on welfare.
And they still like you?
Yeah, they love me. Oh, great, right?
Oh, celebrities.
Now, I rarely think about Russia.
Fear absolutely dominates black people like hamsters on a wheel. Run, 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 run.
What the government has done successfully is made people insecure. People don't think they can do anything without the government. We've got the government regulating nail salons, eyebrow salons. The government has extended and overreached into every single arena of our lives.
The time is now for black minds to be unleashed.
People don't understand is how many black people are so excited about what I'm doing, how many black people see the opportunity, and how many black people are very aware that they have been duped by the left.
She calls that
taking the red pill.
Who else has taken the red pill?
Brandon Tatum. He's got a pretty large following.
Your success in life is dependent upon you.
There's CJ Pearson, who says he's the left's youngest problem.
Black lives, they do matter. So do white lives, though.
And I think why some of these black conservatives have not been successful in the past is because they cared too much about what people thought. We're doing it differently. We are talking a lot of trash. We are very sassy.
The African American community is suffering from a poor memory.
We want people to know you can feel free to call me an Uncle Tom. You can feel free to call me an Auntie Tom. It does not affect me. Do you want to know why? Because I actually read the book, and Uncle Tom was the hero.
Is your privacy under threat?
Has the age of privacy come to an end?
Are you sick of Facebook's lack of respect for your privacy?
If you think your privacy is threatened, be glad you don't live in China.
Chinese government wants to give every citizen a score based on behaviors.
Purchase history, political leanings, and social interactions would be used to calculate a person's trust score.
Facebook and Twitter are banned in China, so people use
WeChat, one of the world's most popular mobile apps.
So the government spies on that round the clock. The state also monitors the Chinese version of Amazon called Alibaba.
Alibaba is by your side 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Why should we care what the communists do? We're not in China.
You're walking to the communists voluntarily. That scares me.
Lee Schoolin came to America 30 years ago.
After I came to the United States, I thought, oh, no more politics. I'm in the land of free. I'm not worried. Then after I saw these things happen, I said, no. I said, I have to tell the American people, don't let this happen.
Here's Lee when she was 16. She survived the Great Leap Forward, the Great Famine, the Cultural Revolution. Her parents were doctors, so they and she were re-educated.
Mao said we shouldn't learn from books. We should learn from the military, from the farmers, from the workers.
And this was to teach you not to be fancy.
The poorer you were, the better you were. If you're illiterate, you're the best.
The repression is over. It's all better now.
The repression is not over. The control of people's mind, people's mouth, people's pen never stopped.
Today in China, if you tell friends about certain books, your message will be blocked. Even innocent-sounding phrases are censored. I understand the titles of novels like Animal Farm, Brave New World, but Long Live the Emperor?
Because long live means forever. Xi Jinping now just the Constitution.
Well, he's president forever.
Yeah, but nobody can talk about it.
人民必胜. They can't even talk about this teddy bear. Winnie the Pooh?
Oh, because somebody said he looks like Winnie the Pooh, so it's banned.
And now another step, more subtle than just banning things. The state will monitor what you say on social media and assign you a social credit score. That will tell them how trustworthy you are. The government says this will allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven, while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. There's going to be this new social credit score.
Yes. It is a big deal.
Some American governments already do something similar.
The LAPD can scan tens of thousands of license plates.
Los Angeles police now practice predictive policing. They pay a company called Palantir to analyze social media, trace people's ties to gang members, and predict the likelihood that someone may commit a crime.
After searching over 100 million data points, Palantir displayed an impressive web of information on one burglary suspect.
People like that. They think it makes them safer.
I think they're giving government too much power. They didn't realize this is going to lead more and more and more. There's no end.
I would like to know that there's a trust score so I can know who's trustworthy and who's not. Sounds sort of appealing.
Yes, we do want to know who we can trust when we do business, but those are market behaviors. We don't need the government to get involved.
When government does get involved, bad things can happen. What happens if you have a low score?
First, lost your job, or you never get promoted. Your children cannot get to good schools. For Chinese people, if the kids cannot go to a good school, that's the whole world.
If they really don't like what you say, they lock you up and torture you.
They didn't allow me to sleep. I was kept in a small room and saw no daylight for half a year.
But that's China. Why should we be afraid?
Get out of my life!
In America, every week on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, I challenge people in power. Trump does make things up. I say these things and no one punishes me. So far. Want a soda? This will cost you more in Philadelphia because politicians there voted to tax these.
Ayes are 13, the nays are 4, majority of members present.
Listen to the applause.
The sugar-sweetened beverage tax.
There was more applause when the bill was signed. The politicians said the tax will fund early childhood education,
This would be great for this community and to help a lot of families.
But store owners say
it's a bad tax.
Melvin Robinson, who runs Bruno's Pizza, says the soda tax is killing his business. What do your customers say?
What they say, they're not buying it.
I refuse to buy soda in Philadelphia.
For a 20-ounce soda, almost $3.
So instead of buying at Bruno's, they cross the street because Bruno's is located right on the outer edge of Philly.
If I gotta get a soda or a juice, I go right across the street.
Right, these customers just cross the street, save a buck.
When I want something to drink, I go right there.
But he comes here for the pizza.
Yeah, they got the best slice in town.
But the soda tax still punishes Melvin. This happens whenever local governments impose special new taxes.
Like, who should pay $3 for a drink that they used to get for 99 cents?
If customers can escape, they will. Do the politicians think about that?
So a buck more for one of these.
It definitely is more, but it's for what we feel is a good reason, for a good cause.
City Councilman William Greenlee says Philadelphia needs the tax money.
Nothing else that we could come up with could raise that kind of funding.
But soda taxes are disproportionately paid by poor people. Even so-called progressives campaigned against this tax.
You don't have to fund childcare on the backs of the poorest people in this city. That's a regressive way to raise funds.
It hits the poor most. Well, even Bernie Sanders opposes this tax.
I didn't know Bernie opposed it, but okay. Remember, we're raising enough money to put 2,700 kids in pre-K and to open 11 community schools.
The pizza parlor's customers didn't think their taxes were being well spent.
Preschool? I doubt that very much.
The mayor says he's helping people.
He ain't helping me, he's tearing me up.
Meanwhile, taxes create unintended consequences. Soda sales are way down, but sales of more harmful products are up.
Now some people are buying more liquor. Less Coke, more liquor.
I don't know about that, because we have a liquor tax too. So.
Politicians love taxes on unhealthy things, and so do the media. They applauded when Denmark taxed fatty food.
Denmark has decided to implement what they're calling a fat tax. Basically, you go to the supermarket, you buy a food that has above a certain level of fat, they charge you extra. All right, do we feel good about this, Doc?
Absolutely.
But Danes just crossed the border to shop in other countries. Within a year, Denmark repealed its fat tax. But Philadelphia isn't repealing anything.
People in this town already pay 44 taxes. State income tax, sales tax, cigarette and alcohol taxes. Philadelphia has a very high income tax compared to other places. How can you not have enough money?
The wage tax is
rolling
high.
in money.
And that, I don't know about that, but there's a lot to do out there, John.
$4 million for the Office of Arts and Culture. Funded 2 sessions of dance instruction. Teach youth empowerment, social issues through hip-hop.
Office of Arts and Culture does a very good job in the city of Philadelphia.
Like we need that. Like we need that.
They're funding the arts.
What arts? People trying to live.
Politician says we got to raise money.
Stop stealing. That would be nice.
I don't know that he's stealing, but he pays himself $121,000 a year.
Wow.
You make $121,000 a year, 3 times what the median income, what your citizens make.
Well, I don't think that's terribly unusual for elected officials.
Sadly, he's right. Politicians routinely make much more than the people they allegedly serve.
A lot of citizens should make more money.
Well, they can't make more money when you're taxing them to death.
Well, I don't think we're taxing them to death.
The politicians always want more, and the restaurants, they just have to pay. $25% tariffs on steel? No.
You will have protection for the first time in a long while.
Yes, a tariff protects some American steelmakers. But what about the millions of companies that make things from steel parts? They're all going to be hurt. Did we learn nothing when we saw the damage done when President Bush raised tariffs on steel? And consumers are going to be hurt.
What's been allowed to go on for decades is disgraceful.
Trade is always under attack. During the election, the bad guy was NAFTA.
There has never been a trade deal as bad as NAFTA.
Many Democrats agreed.
NAFTA cost us jobs, 850,000 jobs.
But he's just wrong. NAFTA's reduction in tariffs and trade barriers did good things for America.
Millennials love avocado toast, avocado anything.
Take the current avocado craze.
Authentic, nutritious, creamy avocados.
It wouldn't have happened without NAFTA, because in winter, American avocados are scarce. But in other parts of the world, avocados are
in season year-round.
Avocados from Mexico.
Today, Mexico provides Americans with most of our avocados, and we pay less for them than we would have without international trade. But the imports did not drive American producers out of business.
The iPhone is the result of years of innovation.
Trade also makes new things possible. Apple gets the special materials it needs for iPhones by going to the Congo, Mongolia, Egypt, Brazil, 63 countries in all.
Extract silver and platinum from the main logic board.
Materials are shipped to smelters in 34 different countries. Apple could do more of this in the United States, but different places offer different skills. Turkey and China are good at smelting. Digging through rock is cheaper in Mongolia. And so on. Apple then ships its refined metal to a bunch of other countries, where it's assembled into phones.
An aluminium body and formed sheet of glass.
Still, that's just a shiny piece of metal, glass, and plastic without the software.
And for the first time, you can actually define the light in a scene.
The highest paying jobs are those held by techies, most of them in America, who design the software and program the phone.
This is iPhone 10.
This phone is possible and affordable only because of global trade.
This is a strike at the heart of Michigan.
But what about trade's downside?
Before NAFTA went into effect, there were 285,000 auto workers in Michigan. Today, that number is only 160,000.
Trump is right. But that's mostly because robots now allow car makers to make cars with fewer workers.
The total sales of cars and car parts are up.
Americans prosper when we specialize in things we produce most efficiently. Things like high-end machinery, energy, intellectual property like movies, music, medicine, internet startups. Not only do Americans make more money producing those things, the jobs are better. Farming and factory work are much more dangerous and physically demanding. Would you rather your kids work here or in an air-conditioned office? Finally, trade hasn't reduced the total number of American jobs. Today, a record number of Americans are working. It's time to stop applauding when politicians say ignorant things like this.
Not only did I oppose NAFTA, I stood on picket lines with workers in opposition.
He and those workers just don't understand what creates a better life for people. Yes, trade hurts some Americans, but many more are better off, much better off, because of trade. It's Oscar time. Sunday night, Hollywood will give famous people awards for what they say are the best performances. But Oscars leave out political actors. Not fair. Politicians deceive people just like actors do. And some of their performances deserve recognition. If not Oscars, at least a STOSSCAR. So here are this year's STOSSCAR Awards. The award for Best Performance by a rich elitist goes to House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. In her eagerness to trash Trump's tax cuts, she described $1,000 bonuses as crumbs.
Crumbs that they are giving to workers to kind of put the schmooze on is so pathetic.
The award for Best Performance by a Democrat goes to San Francisco District Attorney George Gascon. After California legalized weed, the DA promised to drop 3,000 marijuana convictions. and he made getting them dropped easy on the poor guys sitting in jail.
The process will take no hearings. People will not have to hire attorneys. They will never have to come to our courts. We believe that it's the right thing to do, and it's a just thing to do.
And speaking of doing the right thing, the STOSSCAR for best performance by the president goes to the moment when President Trump said,
"We have cut 22 burdensome regulations for every one new rule."
Great. I wish he'd cut the new rules too, but I'll take what I can get. After all, he also chose Jeff Sessions to be his Attorney General. And Sessions wins the STOSSCAR for worst praise for government abuse, for saying this about asset forfeiture.
I love that program. Man, we had so much fun doing that, taking drug dealers' money.
So much fun? Taking billions of dollars from people, most of whom never even got a trial? That's a crime, not good government. Yet both parties like it. And that isn't even the worst example of bipartisanship.
We have worked well together.
The STOSSCAR for the worst act of bipartisanship goes to Senators Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell for their budget deal.
This budget deal is the first real sprout of bipartisanship.
I particularly want to thank my friend, the Democratic leader. I hope we can build on this bipartisan momentum.
No, please don't. You've already added billions to our unsustainable debt and cut almost nothing. Does any politician ever say no to more government? Well, yes, one has. Rand Paul gets a STOSSCAR for best defense of the Constitution. Paul demanded the NSA and FBI get warrants before they spy on Americans.
Do we really want all of our phone calls recorded and then have the ability of the government to bring you in and ask you questions about your phone calls? And if you're not perfectly accurate in recording your phone calls, you could go to prison? All we're asking for is that for Americans, the Constitution should be in order.
But the Constitution bores people, so spying on Americans continues. Next, the STOSSCAR for Best Democrat on free speech goes to Senator Elizabeth Warren, who, after joining left-wingers and vilifying a conservative, then said,
"I think it's dangerous to suppress speech. First, suppression can backfire. Instead of shutting up individuals with disgusting views, it becomes a launching pad to national attention. Second, suppression suggests weakness. It makes us sound afraid, like we're afraid that we can't defeat evil ideas with good ideas."
Good point. The way to fight bad ideas is with good ideas. Unfortunately, her ideas are usually not good ideas. And that brings us to the STOSSCAR for worst performance by a president. That goes to Narcissus. No, wrong picture. I meant President Trump for bragging like a child in tweet after tweet. Don't misunderstand. The STOSSCAR judges love his tweeting, but some are repulsive. He's a genius. He ended the assault on Christmas. And because he got strict on commercial aviation, there have been 0 deaths. Give me a break. He hasn't even done anything that affected aviation. Finally, just as the Oscars give out one Lifetime Achievement Award, this year's STOSSCARs conclude with an award to a politician who consistently has fought for liberty.
It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
Congressman Ron Paul has taken every opportunity he can to challenge enemies of liberty.
I don't understand this division, why you may defend social liberties rather well, but as soon as it comes to me spending my money and assuming responsibility.
He fought to limit executive power.
Why don't we just open up the Constitution and read it? You're not allowed to go to war without a declaration of war.
And he fought the political bipartisanship that's bankrupting America.
And we've had way too much bipartisanship for about 60 years.
Ron Paul deserves several STOSSCARs for fighting for freedom. Now my time is up. That's the STOSSCARs for this year. The Supreme Court is about to decide, do you have to pay union dues if your workplace is unionized? When I worked at CBS and ABC, I had to. I was told, this is a union shop, you must pay up. But now the court may say for government workers, that's unconstitutional. So unions are nervous.
If we lose this case, the entire public sector will be right to work.
Right to work would mean unions could no longer force workers to join and pay dues.
The union's values are all money.
Teacher Rebecca Friedrichs filed a lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court because she says unions are bullies.
If someone takes something from me,
You understand why she says that when you listen to some union leaders speak.
and I'm going to punch you in the face and push you in the dirt.
That guy is boss of the biggest teachers union. Rebecca got mad at her union during the last recession when she tried to save some teachers' jobs by getting all the teachers to take a slight pay cut. They were willing to take a cut?
Absolutely. We're willing to have that discussion. And all of America was taking a pay cut pretty much. Why should we be any different?
But the union wouldn't even allow her to survey the other teachers.
They said absolutely not, would not let me send out that survey.
Then, angering her further,
They told me, Rebecca, don't worry about those teachers who are going to lose their jobs. The union's going to take care of them. We're going to give them a seminar on how to get unemployment benefits.
So Rebecca decided she no longer wanted to pay union dues. She sued the California Teachers Association, and after 3 years, the Supreme Court heard her case.
This is so exciting. Our voices were heard today.
Union voices were heard too. They protested on the steps outside the court.
Fight for equality.
They were worried because Supreme Court watchers said Rebecca was likely to win.
A case that has the potential to decimate the way that public sector unions function.
But then,
Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia has died.
That was the most devastating day.
Without Scalia's vote, the court deadlocked. That meant unions could continue forcing teachers to pay dues.
It is a huge win for public sector unions.
But now a new case filed by this government worker, Mark Janus, is about to be heard by the court. With Neil Gorsuch, the 9th Justice, unions are so worried they even agreed to speak to me.
Our members want their union. They want their union to have power.
Steve Kreisberg represents the union that's being sued by Mark Janus.
It's his right to dissent and not be a member of our union. He only has to pay the fees that are used to represent.
What's the point in that? If you have to pay, that's the main reason he doesn't want to join. He doesn't want to be forced to pay for something he doesn't agree with.
Well, I'm not sure if he doesn't agree with it or if he just simply doesn't want to pay because he'd like to get those services for free.
The union could say, we're bargaining for all you teachers. If you don't join the union, you're a free rider.
I never asked for their representation.
All right, but you're getting it and presumably benefiting.
If I saw their representation as a benefit, then I could agree with that. But I don't see it as a benefit. Their benefits aren't worth the moral costs.
To me, that sounds like the words of a right-wing activist, not the words of a teacher.
Well, she was a teacher who got together with other teachers and said, let's take a pay cut so nobody has to get fired. And the union said, no, you may not even put that to a vote.
They elected somebody else. So she has no more right to call a vote than Hillary Clinton has the right to conduct foreign policy for the United States of America.
Thomas Jefferson believed that to compel a man to contribute to propagation of opinions to which he disbelieves is sinful and tyrannical.
Thomas Jefferson had no sense of 21st century labor relations.
No, he probably didn't. Now the Supreme Court will decide. Oral arguments are scheduled for Monday. The court will announce its decision sometime this summer. I hope they'll see it the way Jefferson did. Forcing someone to pay for something they don't want is tyranny. The new freedom ranking's out. Every year, researchers at the Fraser and Cato Institutes compare economic freedoms like the freedom to trade, amount of regulations, tax levels, plus personal freedoms like women's rights and religious freedom. They publish the results in the Human Freedom Index. It compares countries according to how free they are. So, is America the freest country? No. We came in 17th this year, well behind many other countries. The report says the freest countries are now Switzerland, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Ireland, and then Australia. Years ago, America was near the top of the economic freedom list.
The United States used to have one of the freest economies in the world.
Ian Vasquez helped write the rankings.
It used to be 2, 3, or 4, and then government started to grow. It started to spend more.
To step in with dramatic government action.
And regulate more.
The strongest consumer financial protections in history.
And tax more.
Those who are more fortunate are going to have to pay a little bit more.
Those are reasons we fell on the freedom list. So let's look at the top of the list. Why does Switzerland rank first in the world?
Welcome to the world.
Because it has comparatively little regulation, low taxes, a free press, and other freedoms like same-sex marriage that many other countries lack. A good ranking matters not just because it's good to be free, but because freedom allows people to prosper. Look what happened in Hong Kong, number 2 on the list.
Hong Kong, 1,000 worlds in this one small spot.
Not long ago, people in Hong Kong were among the poorest in the world, but now they're among the richest.
What do I like about Hong Kong? Every moment there's something exciting going on.
Prosperity happened because Hong Kong's government put few obstacles in the way of trying new things, like starting a business. Here I am in Hong Kong years ago, applying for legal permission to open a business. Handing in one form was all I had to do.
Thank you, sir.
The next morning, I opened Stossel Enterprises.
$10.
It was a stupid business, selling things like American Frisbees. But that chance to try new things is what allowed Hong Kong to prosper. By comparison, India ranks much lower, because there to start a business, entrepreneurs may have to wait years, while bureaucrats like these debate the merit of your idea. Good ideas die waiting on these shelves. That's a reason India stays poor. It could be worse. The most oppressed people in the world are those who live in the countries at the bottom of the freedom ranking. Egypt, Yemen, Libya, Venezuela, and least free, Syria. Mostly because of the war. You aren't free if you worry about being killed. Second least free country, Venezuela, was once the richest country in Latin America. Then socialists promised they'd spread the wealth. Now Venezuelans fight over bags of flour.
Freedom is under attack all around the world.
Tanya Porchnik is the ranking's other author. I interviewed her by Skype because she now lives in Austria, though she was born in Slovakia.
You moved to Austria to get more freedom?
Yes, freedom just inspired me. Freedom relates to other things that matter.
What's important in life? Those of us who revere freedom often say it's the dignity of the individual and a chance to live free from coercion.
You can lead your life any way you want as long as you respect the equal rights of others. What job you want to take, what kinds of things you want to do, who you want to marry, what you want to do on your free time, where you want to live.
Countries don't regulate your free time.
Oh, yes, they do. They regulate everything. They regulate vacation time, where you can travel. If you're a woman in some parts of the world, you have to ask permission for men to go out in public.
Freedom brings good things to countries that try it.
New Zealand is
People now want to live in third-ranked New Zealand.
The country is politically and economically stable, with people all over the world attracted by the benefits and opportunities.
Ireland used to be poor, but now it ranks 4th in the Freedom Index.
You don't just arrive in Ireland, you jump in.
Ireland, I think about the potato famine. I don't think about prosperity.
They reduced taxes, they reduced spending, they reduced some regulations, they opened up to trade.
Crack down on China's trade abuses.
America now may close itself to some trade. If that makes you want to move to another country, the rankings offer places to consider and places to avoid. Greece is beautiful, but it ranks 60th in freedom. China has gotten richer, but it ranks 130th. You can read the full rankings on the Cato Institute's and Fraser Institute's websites. It's too bad that the U.S. is now only 17th in the rankings, but the good news is that we are 17th partly because in recent years other countries became more free. Despite what we hear on the news, over several decades, the world has slowly been getting better. Have you ever been to an Indian reservation? If you have, you probably saw serious poverty and alcoholism and drug abuse. Is it because there's something about Indians that makes them lazy or irresponsible? No. When Indians own their own land, they do about as well as other Americans. Manny Jules wants to see more of that. He was chief of the Kamloops Indian Band in Canada for 16 years. Manny, why are so many Indians so poor?
Well, first of all, John, nobody chooses poverty. One of the things that's happened is we've been legislated out of the economy by the federal governments, both in the United States and Canada.
What do you mean they've been taking care of you? That sounds like the best deal.
By taking care of us, that means providing social welfare programs. The only way to break the cycle of poverty, I believe, is by the recognition that every other Canadian and American takes for granted, and that's real property rights.
So in Canada, as in much of the U.S., reserves are owned by the government.
Yes.
So the Indian has some piece of paper that says, this is my lot.
But underlying that title is the fact that in Canada, the federal government owns the land.
So you can't borrow against it.
You can't borrow, you can't get a mortgage, you can't be bonded. There's nothing that you can have that'll allow you to be able to go to the bank on your own without the minister co-signing that loan.
Let's bring another guest from PERC, economist Terry Anderson, into this. Terry, you find Indians do much better when they own their own land.
Yes, John. I first got interested in this subject in 1976 when I visited a member of the Flathead Indian Reservation. And while visiting his house, I noted just how well off he was. He was not in poverty, and I asked, how do you explain this? And I'll never forget him leaning across the table, resting his chin on his hand and elbow, saying, I own this place. And that was my first introduction to the fact that many reservations in the United States do have some fee simple land, that is privately owned land like you and I own our houses. And the Indians that have privately owned land do much, much better. Their land is way more productive than the land that is overseen by the federal government, held in trust.
40 to 90% more productive, you've found.
Yes, the statistics are just astounding. I've done a lot of gathering of those data, and they show that that fee simple lands are anywhere from 40 to 90% more productive than the lands held in trust. And as Manny said, these Indians who have their land under the trusteeship of the federal government can't borrow against them. They are really locked into a poverty cycle as a result.
It is pretty amazing that no group has been more taken care of by big government than the Indians, and no group in America has done worse.
Well, fundamentally, the root of the problem is the fact that we don't have the same property rights as others take for granted. And that has to fundamentally change. We have to be able to recognize the collective ownership by the tribe or the band and free the imagination of the individual entrepreneur. We've had economies that went back many, many millennia and were successful until 1492.
And Terry, you found that Indians had a form of property rights before white settlers came here and messed that up.
Before contact with whites, Indians were very much aware of markets and trading and property rights. Some Indians actually owned the salmon streams. They managed those streams so that they let the larger salmon go up to spawn. And the result is that even today, those streams have larger salmon than the streams that were held in commons, owned by everyone and hence managed by no one.
The clan, not an individual Indian, but a clan would own the stream. And why today would they still have more salmon?
That just goes back to what was superior management over a century ago. And at the same time, I should note, we are mismanaging our salmon stocks by chasing them around the ocean, open ocean, and over-harvesting salmon and many other fish species. We could learn from what the Native Americans did to husband their resources.
And you say you can see the private property difference just by driving through some Indian land.
Oh, it's fascinating to drive through a reservation in the West. Recently, I drove through the Crow Indian Reservation in south central Montana, and when you would come to a fence line and on one side see overgrazing, a few scrawny cattle, maybe a house, and if so, not a very livable house. Right next door, you would see cultivated fields, irrigation systems, beautiful barn, home, and so on. And you don't even need to look at the property records to know that the productive one is held in private and the other one is held in common, in trust by the federal government.
Indians on both sides of the road, but private property on one. And you can even see it from the Google Maps, the difference.
You can see it from the Google Maps. It's fascinating to just Google a reservation, the Blackfeet Reservation, the Crow Reservation.
Here's Blackfeet. There's not much development, very few farms. Here's one where they have private property rights.
You can see the same thing on Manny's reserves, where they have managed to develop an industrial park. They're creating jobs, creating wealth, and at least getting 1 foot up the ladder out of poverty.
Manny, I'll give you the last word on this.
Yeah, well, what we have to do is reverse 500 years of colonization, put First Nations, Indian tribes in the driver's seat. We can be successful where the federal and governments in both countries have failed. And the only way that that ultimately can be resolved is by granting us the right to be able to own our own lands.